panel discussion on job opportunities for mathematics students in industry and academia. Uh, Today's panel discussion will be chaired by Professor Jugal K. Verma from IIT Bombay. So I'll hand over the session to him. Sir, please.
Yeah, so can we start?
Yeah, please.
Okay. All right. So welcome to this afternoon panel discussion on job opportunities in academia and industries for students in mathematics and statistics and perhaps other sciences also. I expect there are people with very varying background, some students who are undergraduate students, some master students, and some PhD students. So we have planned our panel discussion so that it is useful and after a while it will become interactive. So as you know, the purpose of the panel discussion is to inform masters and doctoral students and undergraduate students about job opportunities in academia and industry. We have a very distinguished lineup of panelists. They will make short presentations as per the area of their expertise. And the organizers have chosen them in such a way that we have very little intersection in their expertise, although there are people with multiple expertise here. And you will see that from their presentations. So mathematicians, as we all know, nowadays they are preferred by many types of industries because mathematicians have analytic skills, they can think rationally, they can extract the essence from any kind of data they are presented with. So they have a unique background in comparison with the people with other subjects. So they are trained in mathematics. The mathematics that they learn may not be completely useful in what they do, but that training is extremely important, and some part of that training certainly goes into their job profile, and everyone has to keep learning various skills throughout their life. The panelists will first speak about the skills that the students must acquire during their presentations. We have received a large number of questions from the audience, and we will answer those questions first, and then we will take questions from people who are present here and didn't get the opportunity to ask questions. So that is the structure of this program. For about half the program, we will have presentations by the panelists, and I'm sure you will enjoy listening to them. They have very long experience in various areas of expertise. So we are looking forward to listening to them. The first panelist is Professor Rajiva Karindikar. He is a mathematician, statistician, and a cephalologist, if you know what that means. You must have watched and look, the election results, and he is perhaps the most popular statistician in India because the elections keep happening every year, and we see him in some role somewhere, and his analysis have predicted many poll results correctly. He graduated with a PhD from ISI, and then he taught at North Carolina University. After coming back to India, he joined ISI in 1984. He served ISI in many roles for a long time until he decided to take a switch to industry. So this is something that our audience should notice, that a hardcore statistician and mathematician can switch because he has the required skills required in the industry. So he switched to Crane Software. He was executive vice president, and he helped in many execution of many programs which relate with statistics and data. He is a fellow of Indian Academy of Sciences and Indian National Science Academy. His research interests are in probability, option pricing theory, cryptography, and psephology. So these are all current applications of mathematics and statistics. So it is a pleasure to have Professor Karandikar. to speak to all the people in the audience. So I invite Professor Karandikar to speak to our audience here. Yeah.
Yeah. I am going to talk about career options with maths. And while I will focus on talking about industry, I should put on record that the traditional career has been, of course, the academic career, MSc, PhD, followed by teaching and research. Uh, and academic career is now a good option. The remunerations for academic positions have gone up significantly in comparison to other jobs, say from the time when I chose academics and today. If I compare with a salary with a bank officer and so on, the academics has actually moved up in the ladder. Also, if one adds to this the lifestyle that comes with it, academics is an attractive option. So what I say later should not be seen that I am dissuading people from academics. Okay. Also, today one can consult with industry in addition to teaching and research, making it even more remunerative and attractive. But of course, academics is not everybody's cup of tea. And therefore, there would be people who can choose academics. There will be people who will need to do something else. And what is that something else? That is what I'm going to talk about, at least partly. 20, 30 years ago, there was nothing else. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to talk mainly about jobs in data science and cryptography and what do math students should do to prepare themselves for these jobs. One point I would like to stress is that the student should take the courses undertaken during BSc, MSc as training how to learn mathematical ideas and not an end in learning. As Professor Jugal Verma said in the beginning, the learning doesn't end with your courses. You have to be willing to learn. And that is one point that you need to understand, that it should not take the BSc, MSc, I studied this, so now where is my job? You will continue to, next slide please. So certainly anyone who may not have studied, let's say, simplex algorithm to solve linear programming, but has an MSc in mathematics, so whatever specialization, but MSc maths, but has somehow have not been exposed to simplex algorithm. They can quickly learn that by reading a book much faster than others can. Okay, so this is how one has to understand our training. Okay, this you should keep in mind. All right. Now let me come to one of the two topics, cryptography. So students who wish to keep this path as a possibility, okay, should learn number theory, elliptic curves, generally discrete mathematics, along with programming language such as C++ and Python. Okay. Now, various institutes offer these courses as part of BSc, MSc, not all, but a few. And if you want to keep a door open to cryptography, you should grab and do as many as you can. In ISI, they have launched a MSc crypto program. This is after a MSc Maths and a BE Tech. And you should, that will definitely lead you to a good option in cryptography. Okay. Of course, in today's world, if you do MSc Math and on the side take up online courses, various places are offering online courses, some free, some paid, some with a certification, some without a certification. But you take online courses, read about these topics, master these topics such as block cipher, stream cipher, hash functions, public key cryptography, popular algorithms in use, blockchain, and you write down or create a document saying the books you studied, the courses you took, etc. And whether or not you have a certification, if you have a call for an interview, you can list these and you will be examined. Today the world has changed. They don't simply go by what you can show as your degree. It is more, especially in industry, it is more by what you have learned and understood. Okay. So keep this in mind, that if you get the opportunity to take these courses as outlined, you do that. If not, just do online. Now, data science, these are analytics, data science are buzzwords. There is a huge demand for professionals who are familiar with data science and leverage this. And the reason is very clear. Once the internet became all omnipresent and mobile network had spread wide and all, we start generating a lot of data, and this data using powerful tools we can utilize to make intelligent decisions in any business scenario. Now, for a century, techniques of drawing these meaningful conclusions had been developed by statisticians. Similar development came from the community of computer scientists, techniques which were called artificial intelligence and machine learning, AI/ML. The two approaches have many ideas in common, and yet both have some techniques and ideas not present in the other. And in my view, together, these two form the backbone of what is data science. People mean different things when they say data science, but my take, drawing meaningful, actionable conclusions from data to achieve objectives from using techniques from statistics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, implemented via efficient algorithms. Okay? So this is what I mean is data science, but there could be a slightly different view, but roughly this is what is data science. And okay, desirable skills for a career in data science. So analytical capability along with basic or some exposure to linear algebra and calculus, ideas from probability theory and statistics, good skills with one of the computer languages, basic understanding of ideas in AI, ML, databases, data structures, SQL, efficient algorithms, familiarity and comfort with use of Python and or R, and mastery over at least one. You should not just be jack of all. One of these you should master. Just note that I've said good skill set with one of computer languages rather than software skill, because later is sometimes they can adjust using ready-made packages and drop-down menus, etc. Using all that is fine. You can accelerate your development, but if things don't work, you should get into backwards and go to the basics. So that's why I have said software skills. I would add to these core skills listed above, good communication skills, without which ideas generated will fail to have an impact. And somehow it's not clear whether people with poorer communication skill are good at maths and take up maths, or we do something when you do math courses and we kill your communication skills. I have not been able to figure out, but generally these are poor with kids who have, or students who are good with maths. But you have to work on it, you can get over that. And familiarity with basics of economics. It is all important because most tasks involve some concepts of economics and finance, maximizing profit, minimizing expenditure, and so on and so forth. So some familiarity with economics helps. Courses that students can choose for analytics or data science as career. Top one would remain MStat or MSQE at ISI, Master of Science in Quantitative Economics. MStat, MSc Statistics, Applied Statistics at IIT Kanpur, IIT Mumbai. These two I am familiar. Others may be offering, but these two I certainly am familiar and are good. At CMI, we have a specific program which we have launched recently, MSc Data Science. In general, MSc Statistics at some university and institute, and whatever lacuna may be there in the courses, you make up by online learning. Likewise, MSc Computer Science with appropriate optionals. Again, as I mentioned earlier, degree may not be that important. If you don't know some of these things or you cannot join any of these programs, you can still aim for a data scientist and master some of the skills. So the important thing is that, okay, please, next one, yeah. So search on internet with terms such as, I've just listed some which occurred to me: probability distribution, estimation, testing of hypothesis, regression, classification, and go on, so on. If you do not understand some of the terms appearing on the page, go to them and understand them. Go back and forth. And that is how you can create awareness amongst yourself about what is analytics, what is data science, and master that. Unless you are 100% sure about academic career, I would suggest keep other option open. Should not say that, oh, I earlier was only focusing on academics and then now I'm not getting a good job. Now what do I do? Unless you're 100% sure, keep other options open, develop other skills, software skills, communication skills, keep your eyes and ears open, and parallelly prepare for a industry job. Good luck.
Okay, so thank you very much. We will come back to the answers to questions which were posed to you later.
Yeah.
We go to the next panelist. So our next panelist, Let me is Professor Gautam Menon. Professor Gautam Menon is professor at Ashoka University and Met Science. Let me tell you a little bit about his background. His background is very diverse. He graduated from IISc Bangalore in physics, and then he joined Tata Institute, and later he also taught at Simon Fraser University. He joined Met Science in '98, where, as I said, he is a professor. He is also an adjunct professor at TIFR, and is a fellow of National Academy of Sciences, recipient of Swan Jayanti Fellowship, and he is interested in all areas of science. And you can look at his research output. It is extremely diverse, and now he is thinking about mathematical models of COVID-19. We are all very eager to listen to him. So, Professor Menon, you may present your slides now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you see my slides?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to tell you about opportunities for mathematics students in both in industry and academia, but that have more of a scientific tinge. So areas in science outside of mathematics for which mathematics students might be well prepared for. So first of all, the question is, where are the jobs of the future for those of you who are mathematically inclined? And if you're doing anywhere near a degree in mathematics, it can be assumed that you're mathematically inclined. So these jobs, as far as they relate to the sciences, into areas outside of pure mathematics and applied mathematics, are in the sciences and the social sciences. And they can be industrial jobs, they can be academic jobs, and they can be part of the non-governmental sector. And of course, there are jobs for which mathematicians are well suited that are in government, in a multitude of government organizations that deal with data, for example. And defense is another area where people who are mathematically trained can find work to do. So let me give you some examples that I want to illustrate. The first, of course, is bioinformatics, which is a term that you may have heard of. And at its simplest level, it's a computational discussion or analysis of long sequences. These can be sequences that make up DNA, or they can be sequences that make up proteins. But essentially, it's a mathematical question of where is the information that is contained in sequences of some form. The second option, of course, is mathematical modeling of some sort. For example, something you may not have thought of is the mathematics that goes on to deciding fisheries, who fishes where, what are the constraints that you must apply, when you prevent people from fishing, from going out or staying back, just because you want to keep your catch manageable. Computational biology is a third area, very broad and vast area, where again, the algorithms and the techniques used are much more natural to someone who has a mathematics training. Medical research is something that, again, many of you may not have considered, but the question of how do you get a drug to market? How do you determine the efficacy of a drug? How do you understand how your body reacts to a drug, to any external influence, to any environmental influence? And how does your body function? It's somewhere in between medical research, biology, biophysics, as well as mathematical modeling. So I think of all of these as really being related to mathematical modeling in its examples. My fifth example is one that is particularly current now, and that is of epidemiology. You may have seen notices in the newspapers about how the government is desperately searching for epidemiologists. They can't find them. And epidemiologists are people who do many things, but among them, they do mathematical models of how diseases propagate inside a population. They analyze the distributions of diseases. They may peak now, come down. So you might want to ask, when do you expect dengue to come to Chennai or to Bombay or to Calcutta? Over which months? How does that depend upon the rainfall in the month before? So you can think of mathematical models, you can think of statistical models, but finally the ability to work with equations and concepts that are more mathematical in nature is very crucial to how you think about it. Pharma research, again, very well-paying area, and that's where a lot of mathematical modeling is called for. How do you determine the dosage of a particular medicine? So right now, there are lots of questions around what might be good antiviral medicines for COVID-19. How do you determine whether they work or they don't work? Again, an area that overlaps both statistics, mathematics of various kinds, applied mathematics, as well as a general quantitative understanding. The study of weather patterns, is something that is very computer intensive. It requires very clever algorithms that require Navier-Stokes equations. So take stiff PDEs, systems of stiff PDEs, and methods of understanding, conceptualizing them, and solving them is what you will be doing if you work in a mathematical area with a meteorology department. There are other areas that you might not have thought of. Again, this is an area for design, industrial design, for example, is an area where familiarity with curves, geometry, etc. All of these come in. Of course, there's lots of software that helps you do these things. But in general, the more mathematical you are, the more intuitive you are about mathematical concepts, the easier it is to be able to contribute significantly to that area. Aerodynamics and fluid flow. Again, fluids is something that any good applied maths course studies in its master's degree. These are very canonical and important equations, the Navier-Stokes equation. And these are fundamental to understanding how planes fly, how fish swim, etc. So all of these, anything that involves fluids, the computational simulation of fluids, is something that applied mathematicians are especially qualified to discuss. Something else is science and mathematics communication in general. And this is an area that, in fact, nowadays, many students, even after a PhD in physics or biology or chemistry, are moving into, because they find that it appeals to a part of them they have never really thought of earlier, which is the interest in communicating fresh developments, new developments in a particular area that might be complex. For example, the Riemann hypothesis. I mean, how do you explain it to a layman? How do you explain mathematical concepts in general, the prime number theorem, to a layperson? Communicating mathematics is again very important, and there are jobs in there, science journalists, which again use this information. It's particularly hard to find good people who explain maths well. It's possible to find people to explain biology or physics, etc. But maths seems particularly difficult to have good people who can explain it to the public. Finally, social surveys, data analysis, presentations, etc., all belong to the social sector, the NGO sector. For example, you might want to find out what is the uptake of a particular type of medicine or contraceptive, etc., in a village area. How would you set up a survey? How would you analyze it? All of these need both statistical as well as mathematical understanding. And finally, of course, all of us enjoy teaching and training. You can anywhere between school and above. So the importance of a mathematics teacher and the fact that there are not that many good mathematics teachers around. These are jobs that you should not neglect. They're very important. They will likely be even more important as we move on in the future. Here are some examples that I chose. How do you design a plan for a clinical trial? That's a question that a mathematician might be able to comprehend and understand. How do you predict climate change and ecological change? How do you use models to do that? If a pharma company wants to search a database of proteins to match one that they may have synthesized, how do they do that? How do diseases spread in the case of bioterrorism? This is something that any defense agency would be interested in. How would you contain it? How do you model the spread of forest fires in the Himalayas? Say, what is the mathematics that goes into describing a forest fire and how it moves? What is the boundary of the forest fire as a function of time? There are differential equations or PDEs that go into such a description. How would you write them down? How do you use genome analysis to understand how you can tailor a particular treatment to one person and not so much for another? What works for one person and might not work for another? And finally, as I said, public outreach and discussion. How do you explain a new mathematical result to the public? Okay, so let me just concentrate on what you should have. And again, this is something that will come up in the discussions of the other speakers. And already Mr. Karandikar mentioned many of these. First of all, an overall competence and interest. If you're not good at mathematics, but you want to do something related to mathematics, you shouldn't look for jobs that are like that. And I will assume that you're already interested, you're already competent enough, but it's important to stay within that zone of competence and improve that competence wherever you can, and have interest in what you do. Computer skills, again, very important, very generically, Python, R, C++, etc. These things change very fast, exactly as Professor Karandikar pointed out. So an overall flexibility and ability to learn new things, new computer skills is also important. Technical skills, again, coming from your mathematics training, statistics, applied maths of various sorts. But now let me focus on things that, again, Professor Karandikar said, are things that usually mathematics students don't think they need to have. And that is clarity and confidence in presentation. Very important if you want to look for jobs outside purely academic jobs. Whenever you go to a job in industry, whenever you interview, they will look for things like the confidence of what you say, your clarity of explanation, your ability to write, also very important. It's as important in writing a paper as it is in other types of work where you have to present material to another person. So look for brevity, look for clarity, and look for expressiveness, how cleanly and clearly you describe an idea or a concept. In moving from mathematics into any of the areas that I described, it's important to retain the idea that you should be able to reskill yourself, learn new things very fast. So that requires flexibility, the ability to adapt, the ability to learn on a job. Even if you convince an employer that you can go there and learn something, you should actually be able to do that in person, even though you may not have heard these technical terms before. The ability to work in groups is crucial to anything that you do in industry, anything that you do apart from just simple one-on-one mathematics research. all of life involves working with others in groups, working collaboratively. And it's important to understand and to maintain that ability. Enthusiasm is something that you can't fake. It's easy to understand when someone is enthusiastic about something, who wants to sell you an idea. So the ability to describe what your interests are, what you do in a short, it's called an elevator pitch, which is 2 minutes or 30 seconds or 45 seconds that summarizes your interests, what you are, what you can do, what your abilities are, and why someone should hire you. That again is very important. Whenever you're looking for jobs in any of these areas, or even more generally, it's important to understand what that job involves and to understand and to be able to express why you might be specifically skilled in order to deal with that job. So let me finish up here, and of course we'll come back and we can answer some of these in the question and answer session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Menon. We now go to our next panelist. She is Professor Riddhi Shah. She graduated from TIFR. She has been in academics throughout her life. She finished her PhD in mathematics in 1991. She was a faculty member at TIFR for quite some time until she joined Jawaharlal Nehru University in 2007. She is a recipient of Indian National Science Academy Young Scientist Award and a Japan Society for Promotion of Science Fellowship, Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship. Her research interests are in dynamics of group actions, probability on groups, and their structure. I requested Professor Shah to focus on jobs in academia for students of all levels. So, Professor Shah, you may now present your thoughts on this topic.
My main focus is on academic career, and I'm going to talk about what you do to gear towards academic career. So if you do an MA, MSc in mathematics or statistics from a good university or institute, and if you want to teach in a college, you can go for higher level master's degree, which is an MPhil program offered by many universities like DU and some other places. And many students do, many people take up a job in a college and then do PhD on the side. Now from 2022, if you want a job in a university, then PhD would be compulsory. So PhD, there are two ways to do it. One is a regular route where you have PhD offered by many universities like JNU, Delhi University, Hyderabad University, this is Punjab University, Chandigarh, MS University, Ramakrishna Mission, Swami Vivekananda University, and there are some other universities. This is just some examples that I'm giving you. Then there are institutes like TIFR, IMSC, HRI, ISI, IITs, ICERS, NICER, CMI, etc. You could also do a variant of integrated PhD program and MSc program, which is called integrated PhD program after a BSc. So you get a dual degree with that. Of course, your BSc could also have been a dual degree with undergraduate and masters together. One thing you should remember is wherever one studies, one should choose a good place, whether it's in India or abroad. There are many good universities abroad for pursuing higher studies, which also provide teaching assistantships, but the admission and funding may be reduced for the next year due to the crisis this year. So a lot of students are deferring programs, so they would be accommodated first next year and then they will take new admissions. Though I see a lot of advertisements on Google for PhD fundings all over abroad, Europe and US. You may look up. I will tell you where to look up. So financial assistance to pursue higher studies in mathematics. So NBHM has a master's scholarship for MSc students and PhD scholarship and postdoctoral fellowship. For PhD scholarships, they take national level exam and interviews, and then they choose students to give them fellowship. There are also research fellowships from CSR in UGC, which are called Junior Research Fellowships. So you have to give an exam, which is twice a year, and then qualified students get Junior Research Fellowship, which is quite good. And there is a lower cutoff for JRF, NET JRF, which is called NET qualification. So if you want to teach, you can just get that certificate and get a job depending on how you perform in interviews. Then all these institutes I mentioned have their own scholarship to do PhD. So they have their own entrance exam and interviews, and they select some students from that, top students from that, and give these scholarships. Central universities have their entrance exams and interviews, and then they have what is called non-net fellowship, which is quite small but enough to survive. Then there is DST Inspires Fellowship, then GATE Teaching Assistantships for IITs. And then if you want to do postdocs, then as I mentioned, NBHM you can apply to. Then institutes have postdoctoral fellowships, and there is also National Postdoctoral Fellowship from DST, which is called NPDF. And there are project research assistantships, which are for PhD students as well as for postdocs, which are called JRF, SRF, RA, research assistantship, which are based on faculty's individual project in which they have fellowship to support students. So let me give you some idea about what to do after higher studies in mathematics. So there are many possibilities for a career after a higher degree in mathematics, as you saw, because it teaches us logic and to think analytically, which is very useful for any career. Masters and doctoral students of mathematics, besides learning advanced mathematics, develop important skills such as patience, discipline, and problem solving in a step-by-step method. A career in research and teaching is a well-trodden path that is very rewarding if you love mathematics. So you have to first decide whether you would enjoy this and whether you love mathematics before you take up a career, academic career. So these are some of the advices, recommendations for preparing for a career in teaching and research. So for an MSc degree, choose different electives to learn many subjects while learning basic subjects in mathematics, such as algebra analysis, topology, number theory, probability and statistics, ODE, ordinary differential equations, PDE, and computational mathematics. And then you can choose some other electives if offered, like cryptography, finite element method, fluid dynamics, and advanced number theory, dynamical systems and ergodic theory, etc. This is so that you get an overall background, and you should learn hard and all these basic subjects, which will take you a long way in your academic career. Go for summer internship during MSc. All these institutes I mentioned, TFR, HRI, IISc, they all offer summer internship. It's called Visiting Students Research Program. There is also an academy, Science Academy Fellowship for students to go and do summer internship at various places. Join a good place with an open mind, do 1-year coursework in advanced subjects, and then decide on a topic and advise for a PhD. Develop good written and oral communication skills. Attend many departmental seminars, and also those at nearby places. Currently, you can attend virtual seminars on many topics on the website researchseminars.org. It lists many seminars in different subjects of mathematics. So You should also attend workshops and conferences. Workshops are for learning advanced topics, and conferences keep you informed about new research. These are some of the organizations which have regular conferences and workshops every year. One is National Center for Mathematics, which is jointly run by TFR and IIT Bombay. It conducts foundational and advanced instructional schools and specialized workshops. This is the address. You can go and have a look. Annual foundation schools are very good for beginning PhD students. Indian Women in Mathematics conducts activities for MSc and PhD students to promote mathematics teaching and research among women. But activities are open to all the mathematics students regardless of gender. And this is the website. ICTS TIFR conducts workshops and conferences for advanced PhD students, postdocs, and faculty. And this is the address. Many institutes and universities have workshops and conferences funded by NBHM, UGC, CSR, DST, Government of India. Run a regular student seminar, journal club at your university institute. This is my advice, because unless you learn some topic and talk about it, you will not be, what I'm going to say is that you become more of an expert when you teach somebody else, because they ask you questions and sometimes you haven't thought of them and you learn more. Teaching always makes you more and more of an expert in a subject. So how do you get to know these? You can go to those websites and find out. These are further recommendations. But one more thing I would like to say is that you make it, have a PhD in a good area, so have a broader perspective to do PhD. Don't work in a very narrow area. Also learn things from other areas, from other students, from other faculty, and have an overall education. PhD is not just about writing papers, and it is an overall learning experience. So these are some of the things you might want to read while you're doing MSc or PhD. These are inspirational essays called Lilavati's Daughters. Those are on Academy website, freely available. Those are women scientists and mathematicians essay. Another one is 100 Reasons to be a Scientist. This is on ICTP website. Men of Mathematics, of course, is not freely available, but that's also very inspiration. One thing I like to read is mathematics articles in Quantas magazine. These are freely available. They often have biographies, but not only that, they often have articles, popular mathematics articles explaining current research. Suppose somebody proves a conjecture. They explain it in very simple terms, those articles, and it is really good to read them, because we cannot be expert in every discipline of every area of mathematics, but you can learn a lot about current research from these popular articles, current advances in mathematics. After a PhD, a postdoctoral experience is recommended, and you can give seminars at conferences, visit other universities and institutes, and give seminars to let people know about your work. You can also be informed regularly from online resources like MathSciNet, Zentrablatt, Math Archive, and ResearchGate. The last two are free. The others, the university or institute have to have access to these things. So now, where to look for academic jobs, PhD and postdoc positions and grants? So websites of institutes, universities give you information at appropriate time. Newspaper advertisements, Google, and informal. This is called Maths India Google Group, run by Dr. Ramesh Kaslingam of IIT Madras. And if you want to be a part, you can do Google search. And if you want to be a part of it, you write to this email address, nomathematics@gmail.com. So there you get to know about all conferences, workshops, PhD positions, project positions, not just in India, also abroad. And so many faculty all over world send him these information and then he puts them up. So it is very informative place if you want to look for anything like that, but all about academics, not industry. Then there is AMS job listing, then there is mathjobs.org, then this is phd.org, then Association for Women in Mathematics, AWM, and European Women in Mathematics. These two also list PhD positions, postdoc positions, and jobs all over. Thank you very much. And if you want to see overall presentations of consolidated presentation in many things, many job opportunities and so on, you can see this V. Sunita's representation and Dheeraj Kulkarni and Rohit Holkar's presentations on these sites. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Shah, for a very informative presentation for people who want to remain in academics. Our next panelist is R. Venkatesh. He is a chief scientist at Tata Consultancy Service. He is a BTech from IIT Bombay and MSc in Computer Science from Pune University. He is the head of verification and validation program at TCS. He has spent more than 3 decades as TCS working in the area of software development, formal methods and verification. He publishes widely in several areas of computer science, and the tools for these areas that he and his team have developed have many, many awards. So he is enjoying both the worlds, doing research and also working in industry. So he has a unique perspective on all the topics that we are discussing. So I invite R. Venkatesh to make his presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Jugal, and thanks. Welcome everybody to this panel discussion. So I'm going to give some very high-level thoughts, more from based on my experience in the industry than on any academic. So when you are doing a course, be it BTech, MTech, PhD, or whatever it is, don't look at it as some just a course that is imparting you with some maths knowledge. It of course is imparting you with a lot of math knowledge, whatever it is. It could be statistics, it could be functional analysis, it could be calculus. And it is also imparting you with skills on applying those maths knowledge. But it is imparting much more than that. It is imparting you with some critical thinking skills. It is imparting you with some problem solving skills. It's imparting, essentially it is teaching you how you can take any problem, model it mathematically, how to come up with a mathematical model for that problem and to reason about it and come to some conclusions. And these conclusions could be how COVID is going to spread. It could be which party is going to win. It could be whatever. So it is essentially giving you these skills, the ability to think very, very critically and very, very logically and systematically. And that is how you should look at when you're looking for a job in applying your mathematical skills. Don't look at a job that just enables you to apply the knowledge that you've gained as part of your maths course, because you're not going to find a job that is a direct application of the knowledge. Whatever you do, you're going to have to go beyond the knowledge that you've been given, but you have to be able to apply more skills than the knowledge. And I'm sure Professor Rajiva will agree that just mere statistics knowledge is not good enough to predict election results. You need to go way beyond that. And so that's what is important when you're getting onto a job and being successful in a career. I would say you need to focus on that. Opportunities, of course, everybody has said, and here I'm just saying the opportunities are really plenty. There is no dearth of opportunities. You could finance, insurance, banking, accounting, you pick an area, there is an application. there's a job opportunity for a mathematician. And in fact, if you look at future skills, the skills that are really critical are critical thinking, problem solving, and analytical thinking. So long as you have those skills, you have plenty of job opportunities. And these opportunities I've listed as, these will also have, in addition, opportunity to apply your math knowledge, the math skills that you have learned in school or college or whatever institute, whatever degree you have got, it will give you an opportunity to apply this knowledge. But even without the knowledge, you will have a lot of job opportunities. So don't even be concerned about whether there are enough opportunities or not. For a good person, for a person who can apply these skills, there are plenty of job opportunities, and they will all be successful in careers. That is the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is the attitudes that you need to. So recently, computer science, ACMA, that is a computer professional body of computer science, are coming up with something called CC 2020. What they are introducing in a curriculum design is a concept that they call as disposition, which is unfortunately not taught in any institute very explicitly. All institutes expect you to learn those skills implicitly without any, and these are skills that are very important when you get out from your degree to a job. Problem solving, of course. What I mean by problem solving is you're given a problem, which is very different from a task. A task is you're told that you have this math knowledge, apply that. Here is a place where you can directly apply that knowledge and solve a problem. Please do it. That's a task. A problem solving is being told that please predict how COVID is going to spread in Tamil Nadu, or how COVID is going to spread. And it will require you to figure out where to get the data from, what are the mathematical models, how to model various interventions like lockdown, travel restrictions, whatever interventions come, how to model those. You're not going to learn that directly in any institute of yours. You will have to figure all that out. So when we say problem solving, it is about taking that ownership of finding everything that is needed to solve that particular problem. And it will go way beyond the math knowledge that you have. And that problem solving will need you to connect with the right people, maybe connect with government officials, connect with faculty somewhere, connect with industrialists somewhere, whatever it is. It needs a lot of skills beyond your math knowledge. And so that's a very important disposition that you need to have. Task ownership comes with problem solving. When you're assigned a task, take ownership of that task. We have found very often people come and say, assign them a task, go to them after some time, and they say, but internet was down and therefore I couldn't find this information, or I need this for particular data for solving this problem and that was not available to me. When you say task ownership, you address all these issues yourself. If need escalated, go to your superiors, ask them, this is where I'm stuck, how do I get it? These are options, whatever it is. It's an ownership that you need to have. The third thing is skills. Skills is, you develop skills when you practice applying your knowledge several times. It's like take a footballer or a cricketer or whatever. The way they develop their footballing skills or cricketing skills is by practicing for hours. You may wonder what's there in a cricket batting stroke, but Tendulkar practices the same stroke for hours to develop that as a skill. And so when you want to do similarly for math, you need to take your math knowledge and apply that skill in solving several problems. That's how you develop a skill. So it needs hours of practice, hours of hard work. And that's what you would need. And that's what will make you a successful professional. Beyond math knowledge. Math knowledge is absolutely required. The training you get is absolutely required, but you need to go way beyond that. And at some point, I hope academics figure out how to impart these skills. And it's very hard to really impart these attributes in there. And Professor Gautam Sen said, Professor Riddhi also said, I think, enjoy your work. That is absolute critical. If you don't do that, you won't be able to spend hours practicing, developing a skill. You won't be able to spend the hours needed to look for data wherever you want. So if you don't enjoy it, you're in the wrong field. Just get out. And so that's how do you get these? What are really down to earth, implementable advices that I can give? Pick up internships, as many internships as you can. It really puts you on the field to solve specific problems. You will get a exposure to what it is to be in a real life situation, solving and applying your knowledge. Preferably pick internships in areas that you like, internships in companies that will let you do a lot of. Don't look at internship as a tick mark for your degree. Look at internships as an offer. Even if your institute doesn't require you to do an internship, do an internship wherever you can. And it will also teach you to network with people, connect with everyone. People interaction, absolute must. In today's world, which requires very high quality communication skills that several of our speakers before spoke about. You should be able to develop relationships with people. You should be able to, call someone up, say, I need access to this particular data, and you may have some, can you just give it? You should be able to develop that kind of relationships with people. And that's very, very critical. So attend conferences, develop relationships with people, attend, even in a webinar like this, ask questions, interact with people, interact with peers who are attending this lecture. What do you think of this guy's talk? I feel this is absolute rubbish. Whatever. Express yourself clearly, interact with people, develop relationships. That's going to be more and more critical as in the future. Solve completely unrelated problems. Whatever degree you're doing, pick a problem that you think interests you, try to solve it. Today's era, of course, solve the COVID prediction problem in whatever way you can, with whatever data you have access to. But there are many such problems you can put your finger on. Pick it up, try to solve it. That will expose you to the kind of skills that are required to solve a problem. Solve as many problems as you can while you're obtain your degree. And there'll be many people who have put up problems, be it whether you want to go in academia or industry. Solving a lot of problems will really help. Learn technology. Very critical in the future. A lot of people have said, I didn't want to put programming because people will think I'm biased coming from the IT industry. But so I just abstracted it out to technology. But learn whatever technology, learn programming, learn technology. You cannot be, today, a lot more can be achieved through technology than by using pen and paper. You need to be, even proving theorems. If you know how to exploit technology, you can prove more complex theorems that need long winding arguments than you can if you're going to do just using pen and paper. So learn, master it, develop an aptitude towards technology and use it as much as you can. Yeah. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Venkatesh, for your very valuable advice to our audience who may want to go for industry. I remember when I was a student, I had option of going for engineering or computer science or humanities, because I studied in a place, BITS Pilani, which offered a lot of flexibility. That is not the case in many places. So whichever place you are there, try to, as per the advice of many panelists, if you are not sure what you want to do in future, try to get diverse knowledge in many, many areas, so that when it comes to making an actual decision, you are not short of skills. It is the time when you are student to learn all these skills. I can tell you a trade secret that whenever Google hires a person, it conducts 10 interviews. And the first interview is to test the programming language skills. They say that every Google employee has to be a master in programming. He may not do programming later, but they have to be programmers, because they know that if a person can do good programming, his analytical skills are in place. Same thing can be done about statistics or mathematics. And so these areas, they require very clear understanding, very clear communication, and you may not use them right now, but later on they become extremely useful. I started out as an abstract algebraist, and those words abstract, in those days abstract was used, but nowadays it is very, very concrete. And I guide my students to write programs to solve many abstract problems, the so-called abstract problems. As you can see that from the panelists, the common advice is to acquire as many skills when you are young, and you never know when these skills will become useful later in your life. You have examples among the panelists themselves that their training was in something else, but their interest changed and certain circumstances required them to learn new skills, but they have been learning. We all have been learning. And so whether you go for industry or whether you are in academia, we have to be students all our life. We have to keep on increasing our skills so that we are fit for any kind of job. So we have actually received many questions from audience who registered for this panel discussion. And we have distributed these questions among the panelists. So now I will invite the panelists one by one to answer the questions which were posed to them. So I start with Professor Karandikar first.
So yes. Let me just start with the one question which many of the students have asked, and actually which is covered in our presentation, but I will stress. So students have asked what industrial jobs after MSc in pure math, especially topology, functional analysis. Others have asked the same question, algebra, differential equation, numerical analysis. I would like to say this is a wrong question to ask. This is like asking, I have a key, which locks can it open? Okay? So there is no lock which will exactly open with your key. You will take forever to find it. You have to look at your education as we are taught you how to make a key. Now you are given a lock, make a key. I mean, most of our presentations, we have stressed this point. It cannot be stressed again and again, but it is very important. The coursework is not an end in itself. It is enabler. We have trained you how to think mathematically, analytically. In real world, nobody says that it's not an exam, that in next 1 hour you have to solve this problem. You cannot look at a book. You cannot call anybody. You cannot use internet. No. You can do all of that and you can take suitable time and come up with a solution. So if you don't know something, you can find out about it and learn. So don't look for, just where can I apply this? You look at mathematical knowledge in general and then try to access a problem. Everybody's presentation at this point, but still lots of questions on that. I will take one more question and then related, then we can go around the table. I can come back with more questions. So one, between applied maths and pure maths, which has more opportunities in job. Again, whatever math you do, you are unlikely to be able to find a job where exactly that one will fit. In fact, for no other profession also it works. Everybody has to learn on the job. So you try to get whatever education is possible, make your choices, learn in parallel, and then look for jobs. So by taking pure maths, you should not take a view that I have nothing else to do with the world. Remember, nobody is going to pose a problem to you as a mathematics problem. They are going to pose a language in their own domain phrases. You have to formulate it as a problem, appropriate techniques, and solve it. I will just end this part of my answer by saying that my research work is more or less completely orthogonal to whatever applied work I have done. I have done applied work in areas where I have done no research, and the areas in which I have done research, I have done no applied work. So let others take up other questions. I will come back to more questions.
Okay, so Professor Menon, would you like to take some questions from the list that you saw?
Yeah, I can take one question which says, during recruitment in high-level scientific centers like ISRO, DRDO, etc., the hiring of maths people is very, very lower. Many times there is no hiring than engineers, chemistry, physics, master's degree holders. Why? How does one shine in these kinds of areas for math people? Again, I think it's a question of how you present yourself and how your orientation is. And as I said, usually mathematics students present themselves as being very limited in what they do. They know mathematics well, but you have to sort of show anyone who's interviewing you that you have a broader scope, that you can learn new things, pick up new areas, move to new frontiers that you may not have thought of before. And as I said, any job that you want to apply for, research it well, find out what it is that they're looking for, and understand for yourself what is it that your skills can do to contribute to that particular area. So I think this is important. I don't think those are close to mathematicians at all. But I think the young mathematics students should understand that they have to present themselves in a particular way to make themselves attractive to potential employers. And part of that is enthusiasm, the ability to learn. You have to show your employer that you're willing to learn new things, even though you don't have that, you may not have that particular training up to that point. And if there is some specific skill needed, learn at least that much to be able to present to your interviewer that you're interested and you have taken some effort to come up to that level. That's the only advice that I can really give. We can move on from here to the next panelist.
Maybe I can add to this. I check when people ask, they don't check these websites. They are just putting questions here, but they should check websites of various places where they want to go. So DRDO, I saw, currently has 4 positions where they ask for MSc with first class in mathematics, applied mathematics, or computer science. So MSc in these 3 subjects they are asking. So just mathematics also they are asking. You can apply and you can get a job. In ISRO, they are asking specific, more engineering, but also they have PhD in computational fluid dynamics or computer science as one of the specialization. Then if you have aeronautics, I mean, if you learn some applied mathematics with aerodynamics as electives, National Aeronautic Laboratory, NAL, also hires people with applied maths and some specialization in various subjects. But you know, you have to look up these things before just posting a question is what I would like to say.
Yeah. Thank you. Venkatesh, would you like to answer some of the questions you saw from the audience?
Yeah, I can pick up, for instance, there is a question on which nobody wants to take up, I guess, is doing a PhD from IITs, IISER, or anything is significantly better than doing a PhD. So I would like to say that doing a PhD from the institute matters when you're getting your initial placement, because they have built a brand value for themselves, and that's for a good reason. It's like when you go to buy a mobile phone, you're going to buy a mobile phone of a brand that you really know and understand. But does that mean it's the end of your career? Not at all. There are a lot of people who have got their degrees from lesser known institutes and have done extremely well. If you just look at the CEOs, our prime minister as an example, you look at CEOs of companies, you'll find examples. Yeah. So the university doesn't determine necessarily your final destination. That is up to you to a large extent. Your initial path may be hard, but it's how you put in the effort after that, how exactly you perform is what is going to determine your future career path. And nobody's going to ask you where did you graduate from 5 years down your, once you've got 5 years of experience. They're just going to ask, they're going to judge you based on how you converse with them. They're going to judge you based on how you're expressing yourself technically or otherwise. Those are the points they're going to make before deciding whether to take you or not. Yeah, that's the one question there are others I can take up, but this is what I thought I'd pick up.
Okay, so thank you very much. So we will now take questions which have been sent in the chat box first. Let us see. Yeah, so I don't see any questions actually.
Okay, let me take up 1 or 2 more that I have seen. Okay.
Yeah.
So someone has asked, how can a student enter reputed management institute after MSc Math, and how, etc. Now, again, the question has been asked without really looking at their entrance exam question papers. If you see, a major chunk of their questions are on what they call quantitative skills, which is mathematics at class 12 or BSc level. Now, one thing you should remember is that after you do MSc, you should not forget what you did at BSc and certainly not what you did in class 12. So essentially, if you have done MSc and carry forward all the knowledge that you have done so far, you should be able to do the quants part very easily, and then you can focus on the verbal ability and other skills there. In fact, the same thing goes in other questions people have asked, how to prepare for CSIR NET, UGC NET, etc. Now, again, if you see the last 8-10 years question papers on CSIR NET exam, they are mostly at BSc level core mathematics, linear algebra, calculus, and analysis. None of them are on your special topics in MSc. And some students say, oh, why don't you ask those questions? So doing special topics doesn't mean you forget the basics. Okay, so if you retain your basics, you should be able to address CSIR net things, or if you wish to join IIMs, etc. The core quantitative skills that you have developed should continue. You should not say, I have done MSc, why are you asking me, is something a continuous function or not? Why not? You should not forget that. That's the point.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So let's see our hosts. Saurav Sen.
There are now a few questions that have come on the chat box. So
Okay.
you may want to pick up some of them.
Yeah. So I invite the panelists to take up their favorite questions and answer them. Yeah, there are many questions here now.
Okay, let me take some questions which people are asking CMI. So CMI related questions, you please write an email to me or to admissions and we will answer them. I don't want to talk about my institute too much in this.
You're missing an opportunity to publicize.
Questions are, how to do this, how to do that, etc., etc. They're too specific. In general, you prepare well for the question from whatever you know, and look at past question papers. That will give you an idea of what level we expect. Okay. Yeah.
So yes, go ahead, someone.
No, there is a question about chaos theory having applications apart from weather prediction models. So, Gautam, would you like to remark on that?
Certainly, sort of chaos theory, statistical fluctuations in quantities is very crucial, for example, to understanding diseases, which is something that I'm looking at now. Most models, you can either have completely deterministic models that describe a disease, or you can try to understand what are fluctuations about this. And these fluctuations typically are chaotic in general, but there are ways in which we can model them using stochastic differential equations. I'm not sure, I would sort of not look at it saying, I'm an expertise in this particular area, and does that qualify me to study something very, very specific? It's more, what does my mathematical training and understanding qualify me to think about a larger set of problems? So you will never find something that is purely in chaos theory. But what you need to do is to find something that is to understand how your training prepares you to solve problems in general that have a mathematical flavor or a mathematical tinge.
Yeah.
So somebody asked, what is the application of real mathematics? So I would just like to say one thing. I don't know what they mean by real mathematics, but ICM 2018 in Rio, they gave a Gauss medal to David Donohoe, who has developed this advanced and very quick MRI technique to do MRI in a short time. And he uses many things like wavelet analysis and probability and all, but he also uses a lot of pure maths which he thought he would not use. For example, he uses functional analysis and L1 norm from functional analysis. So, and he himself was surprised that that has an real life application in mathematics. So this is just one of my examples. There are many examples like in credit card transactions, banking transaction, all these security cryptography and all. There is a lot of prime number theory used there. So I don't know what they mean by real mathematics.
I can answer one particular question that I've seen here. Is that okay?
Yeah,
please.
Sure. Yeah, please.
The question was, if you have only MSc mathematics degree, what do you need to go into interdisciplinary subjects like either in physics or in biology? So the computational biology group at IMSc takes students from any science background and any mathematics background. So we've had students from maths background, from applied maths, who applied to us and then they join us. What we look for is, first of all, some ability in the degree that you have, certainly, but also a broader interest in biological problems. So if you're not interested at all in biology, but have just applied to the program, then it's easy to figure out that that's the reason that you applied. So an interest and some knowledge, reading, understanding of biological problems that you're interested in is something, but your degree doesn't really matter to that. And that's also true, for example, for NCBS in Bangalore, which has a group that works on more mathematical biology, theoretical biology areas. I think with a field like computational biology, essentially you want to spread the net as large as possible. So to take people with an engineering background, mathematics background, varied science background. So we're really looking for students who are good and interested, but the interest is very crucial. Not so much your abilities or your specific training in that area, but certainly your interest in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I will pick up from where Professor Gautam has said. There are a lot of questions on whether I should learn X or Y, which could be, should I do theoretical mathematics or applied math? Should I do linear algebra or decide based on what your interest is. Whatever is your interest is, just go after it. Don't really be picking a subject based on what offers better opportunity, career opportunity. Or if you're good, you will have a good career. It's just have faith in that and pick what interests you and become good in that. And that should answer a whole bunch of questions on should I do X or Y.
Yeah.
So there are students who have asked questions like, what jobs can we get after BSc Mathematics? So you see, if BSc Maths by itself doesn't give you a specific job opening, okay? Other than jobs which require just an undergraduate degree in any subject, you can take that up and be with rest. I mean, it doesn't prepare you specially for using your math skills per se. So ideally, I would say, if you can get a job which uses these things, get into that. But even after that, parallelly try to do a MSc at a later date and so on. Don't stop your education only at BSc.
Yeah. Again, taking off from what he said, there's also questions on should I do a PhD or an MSc? There are quite a few people who have asked that. I believe if you have the interest and temperament to do a PhD, do a PhD. And only if you feel you don't have it and you would like to get on with a job after MSc, do it. Because a PhD really gives, apart from many things, it's a fun time, fun 5 years where you really, many may not agree, but gives you a lot of freedom, trains you into getting into the depths of a subject, trains you into how to do research and all that. So it's a very good opportunity. You won't get those days back once you get into a career.
Let me add, after that, don't say that I have worked on this problem, now where I can apply this problem.
Exactly. That's the point.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. I agree, doing PhD is a good idea. It shows your higher analytical skills, etc. But don't limit yourself to just applying whatever you have proven.
Yeah. Don't look at PhD as training you in a very specific, narrow field. It is more about training you to do research and getting into depths of a subject.
Yeah. When I was leaving my PhD program, I graduated, I asked my advisor, give me some advice which is useful to me later. And he said, what you have done is your first PhD. Now you have to do PhD every 2 years in a different topic. So it's the same underlying principle of all kinds of jobs that you have to constantly learn and new skills and diversify into different domains. And life can be very interesting if you diversify. As you can see, what Professor Gautam Menon is doing, he's mixing all kinds of sciences and having fun, right? And I'm sure this is. Same is true in industry where you are called upon to solve very diverse problems and learn different skills and enjoy. So, but the first requirement that every panelist has said that you have to find your area, your domain in which you feel comfortable and you love that subject. That is extremely important. If you can find this during MSc, well and good, but it has to be done towards the end of MSc, what you want to do. So whether you want to go for industry or PhD, that's the time to decide. So that can be done by doing variety of courses so that you find what you love, right?
Let me take up one
So-
question.
Yeah.
Elaborate on jobs in science communication. How can I start working towards it while pursuing MSc? So in general communication, including science communication, firstly, just start by explaining whatever you are doing in your class to someone who is not taking up that course. A fellow mathematician or mathematics student who has not taken a special paper that you have taken, try to explain that to the fellow mathematics student who is interested. Okay. Next, go to someone outside of MSc Math group. Let's say if you're doing a MSc, go to someone who has had a BSc Math, try to explain that to them. Why is it important? So it has to start with why should they listen to you? Okay. Next, you can take up some news item. Let's say right now everything is around Corona and COVID and so much of thing comes up. Pick up something, read about it and try to explain it to someone. Okay. So develop your communication skills to begin with to a very interested audience, and then you have to work towards getting someone else interested. So there is no coursework for this. You have to really practice and learn on as you go along, and you will discover interesting facets. I used to think 25 years ago that I am useless for the rest of the world. Nobody will be interested in talking to me because, as my friend said, I used to live in a Hilbert space. So
I can add a little bit to that particular answer. I also noticed that question. I think one other thing is that you should write in order to communicate. Write. There are many online venues like The Wire, for example, which accepts articles on science and mathematics. So use that to figure out how is it that one writes for the public. There are several jobs right now in multiple places that they call things like science outreach fellowships, science outreach assistant, etc., project positions, as well as more long-term positions. The Indian Academy of Sciences has a program that is devoted to science communication and writing, and the other academies too. So if you want to move in that direction, the best advice is actually begin to do it. If you're good at drawing, begin to draw science-related cartoons. If you're good at writing, begin to write, find venues in which you can publish these, and make sure that that people begin to see this. Then you can apply with something like a portfolio of work that you've done and interest people in what you've been doing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There was also a question somewhere on do MNCs employ math students? Google, Facebook, IBM, everybody employs maths people. And so there is no dearth of maths job employment opportunities in MNCs.
So I want to add to what Karandikar said. This is, people are asking specific questions. If I do this, what kind of job I get? If I do that, what kind of job I get? Main thing is whatever you do, first you have to like that and learn that well. And you of course, it's not one subject that you learn around it. And then look for job. Before doing it, you are looking for a job, that's not going to work. I mean, yeah, of course, we have, I think Karandikar and Venkat and Gautam have given what all you need if you want specific kind of jobs. So you can have a look at those. Presentation will be online and you can find out what you need if you really want only a specific kind of job. But otherwise, first do what you love most. Do the subject which you like and then think about jobs.
Yeah, there is a question which can be answered, I think. Which government sectors which offer jobs in cryptography?
Defense is the main, defense and space. These two are the main consumers. Of course, through this only, you cannot directly join a intelligence bureau or something like that. But that requires, but how they get hold of these people, I have no clue. Okay. But direct job openings you will see in DRDO and other related defense entities directly with Navy that I work with, or ISRO.
Yeah. Okay. Which are the most important languages which work for mathematics? Yeah.
Important languages work for mathematics? I don't understand.
I mean, I think they mean to say there are so many languages like Python, C or C++. So what should they learn?
I would say a lot depends on what domain you later want to work in. But if anything related with data science, analytics world, then the top thing is Python and R, preferably both, if not one of the two. Python probably. And if we are looking at a real core something, nothing like C++ or C, because ultimately everything is translated to C and then implemented. But I'll leave to Venki to also elaborate on that.
Yeah.
This is, if you ask a computer scientist, that's a,
Yes,
there'll be a war. There'll be war in the room. People picking up one language over the other. But currently what is popular is Python, because it gives very powerful language constructs to express your solution. So, and it's very easy to learn. So Python is a language I would start with, but Python has obvious limitations, like performance is a challenger. So you may want to learn other languages in case you're hit the performance hurdle that Python has. If you're going to work with just available libraries which solve the performance problem anyway, then you can. But Python is much easier to learn and has a rich library that you can use. So that's where I would start.
Yeah, I mean, there is a group in IIT Bombay. They bring in high school students and they teach them Python. And they really love, they write programs to do their math problems. And so it's a high level language, as you said. And people working in AI and machine learning nowadays, they program in Python.
There's a relevant question. What about Java?
Yeah.
For math student, Java, I wouldn't advise immediately. Much later, if the problem at hand really needs you to learn Java, like many of the panelists have said, you should be open to learning something new as per need. But if you want to learn a language for the sake of a language, it would not be Java.
And once you've learned one, let's say Python or C++, if your job requires Java, yeah, you can pick it up very quickly because there is a different construct. There will be few core differences, but mostly it will be syntax. So learning one language will enable you to learn other language quickly enough. So I would say today stick to C++ and or Python if possible both.
Yeah. And there are these great books called Art of Computer Programming. And we start with mathematical skills first.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so that is the basis. Just the language is not enough. You should be good at the mathematics and algorithms and so these things before you write a program. But efficiency is obtained by knowing the relevant mathematics.
Well, someone is pumping
Absolutely.
one question again and again. So let me take that. Do you need multiple postdocs for a research position? Now, this is institute to institute, different policies. Some may require several, some may not require. So very difficult to say, is it required or not required? Okay. It also depends on how good your earlier CV is, publications are. This is a complex question. There is no generic answer. Yeah.
IITs and ICERs and MHRD institutes, they don't require postdoc position at all. Immediately after PhD, you can get a position if you are good. So the first 3 years, nobody gets a permanent job, but you can get a position in these institutes even without doing postdoctoral position. But many people advise that immediately after PhD, you should move to a institute where there is a research group which works in your area and broaden your horizon. So most people do one postdoc, and it's not difficult to get a permanent position after doing one postdoc.
The interesting question, what is the scope of MSc Math student in game theory, design and programming? Well, there is a lot of scope, but you have to be interested in gaming and programming. You should have participated. You should know what it all involves. Then you can bring in your math skills and apply them, right? You can't just take your MSc Math and say, okay, I want to do gaming and programming. What should I do now? Next. You have to understand. So generally, math application to any domain, you have to be comfortable enough to understand that domain. Okay? If you get a job as in finance industry and you don't know the difference between profit and revenue, then you have had it. You may be a great mathematician, but you will be a disaster. So you have to understand the domain and then try to apply your math skills there.
Yeah. So, Rajiva, there is a question which you can, I'm sure you can answer this.
Jugal, I'll have to drop out now for another meeting at 6:30.
Yeah, we will soon close. Is there any application of differential geometry in the field of computer science? And I will add statistics also.
Application, if you say, okay, name one explicit thing, I can't. I don't know of. Okay. But what idea will come up where? So there is an area which is called topological data analysis. Okay. Some concept, some topology is getting used. One of my colleagues at CMI is into it. We have had a few seminars. Differential geometry, I really don't know. There must be some, there may be some. You can add something?
Yeah. I mean, in computer science, of course, the basic concepts in differential geometry play an important role in computer graphics and image processing. And, you are seeing our images. So how is it possible to see other people's images on the computer screen? So this happens because of image processing algorithms, which are heavily dependent on differential geometry and projective geometry.
Before we close, let me tell folks that those who had questions which were not answered, they could write to me or to all panelists, etc. We will see if that is enough meat in them. We'll answer them. Try to. Yeah.
We will put these presentations on the website of VFM. Some audience have asked that they would like to read them further for reference. So all the panelists, I think they will be happy to leave their slides on the website of Virtual Math Fest 2020.
Sure.
I think we have, let us thank all the panelists for wide knowledge they have shared with us and from their long experience. And I'm sure it has been extremely useful to the people in the audience. And we thank the organizers to think about having these panel discussions, because this is the questions that we got are probably very, very relevant for their future careers. And I hope this panel discussion is useful to them. So let me thank Professor Menon, Professor Riddhi Shah, Professor Karindikar, and Professor Var Venkatesh for spending their valuable time from their busy schedules to come for this panel discussion. On behalf of all the organizers, I thank all of them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Professor
Bye.
Verma, for being the chair.
Yeah, thank you, Professor.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
Thank
to
you.
all the panelists. Yeah.
Bye-bye. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.